Saturday, November 9th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. This morning, before I start, I'd like to thank all my viewers, subscribers, supporters of the channel for your interaction, for your communications, for your comments, feedback, for your support through PayPal, Patreon, through the maneco 64 Teespring store. Just wanted to show you today I've got my equivalent of End the Fed mug, but for the Bank of England. The Bank of England's nickname is the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street. So I bought the rights to this picture of the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street here from Alamy. I think the rights are for a year and I can use that in my products, right? It says, time to retire the Old Lady of Threadneedle Street and shut the bank's doors. So this is for my UK viewers or any viewer out there who wants to see the Bank of England shut down as well. In the back here, I'll read, it's from the founder of the Bank of England, 1694, William Patterson, right here. And this is what he said, hidden in plain sight. The secret of central banking, right? The bank hath the benefit of all interest on all monies which it creates out of nothing. So there you go, money or credit, right? He was actually wrong about that. It's actually credit because real money is gold and silver and you cannot create gold and silver out of thin air. But the thing is, the interest on that was paid with real money. So quite a scam, right? So today I want to talk about how world debt has reached an all-time high of 188 trillion, and it's equivalent to 230% of GDP. Yeah. You thought the US had a high debt to GDP ratio of 107%, but looks like the world is in worse shape. This is from an article here I just saw on Zero Hedge. Global debt tops 188 trillion by Michael Snyder. Just wanted to read the comment from the new chief of the IMF, a woman called Kristalina Georgieva, right? She replaced the criminal, outgoing criminal, Christine Lagarde. She was a convicted criminal, right? Didn't serve her sentence, a 1-year prison sentence. And now she's the president of the ECB, of course. So this is what Ms. or Mrs. Georgieva says. The global debt load has surged to a new all-time record equivalent to more than double the world's economic output. IMF chief warned Thursday. I like the way they use world's economic output instead of GDP, right? Just to get people, just to kind of confuse people. Because if you say it reached 230% of GDP, it would sound alarm bells, right? Because we know that that's what the term people use, but she uses output. And I'll continue. It says, while private sector borrowing accounts for the vast majority of the total, the rise puts governments and individuals at risk if the economy slows, she said. And she goes on to say, global debt, both public and private, has reached an all-time high of 188 trillion. This amounts to about 230% of world output, of world GDP, right? Mrs. Georgieva, or Ms. Georgieva. Georgieva said in a speech to open a 2-day conference on debt. Wow, they're going to... why do they need 2 days for a conference on debt? All you need to do is try to decrease it and live within your means, IMF president. So with that, I'm going to skip now to a story that came out last night, quite important for the UK, also for the rest of the world. So one of the rating agencies, Moodys, lowered UK credit outlook to negative on Brexit paralysis. So these rating agencies, of course, are not independent. They might be public companies in the private sector, but they're not. There's 3 of the main ones, S&P, Moodys, and Fitch, right? And why am I saying this before I look into what they said about the UK? Well, because Some of you might remember, I do very well, back in August of 2011, just when gold was like moving up to its all-time highs, above 1900. This bombshell came out. S&P downgrades U.S. credit rating for first time, right? So this was in the summer of 2011. So that's what happened there. But what happened afterwards? What did the U.S. government do? Well, they punished S&P, right? This is from a couple of years later in 2013. This is from CNBC. I hate to use CNBC, but they've got the story. It says S&P calls U.S. lawsuit retaliation for stripping AAA rating, right? So, yeah, this is what it says here. Standard & Poor's on Tuesday blasted a $5 billion fraud lawsuit by the U.S. government as retaliation for its 2011 decision to strip the country of its AAA credit rating. So there you go. These rating agencies, they're not that independent. Is the UK government going to punish Moody's? I don't think so. I think it's more the US, but I'm sure it's in the back of the mind of Moody's as well, and S&P and Fitch, to be careful where they tread, right? The other thing I would say about the reason for Moody's lowering the outlook, so they haven't downgraded the UK, but they've lowered the outlook, and usually that's a first step towards downgrading. They say it's because of Brexit paralysis. I would say it's more because of the debt situation, and I don't think it's any coincidence that a couple of days ago on Thursday, both leaders of the, how can I say, the Chancellor and the Shadow Chancellor, in their campaigning for the next election on December 12th, they've both come out and said they're going to increase spending. The debt's going to go up, right? They've thrown caution to the wind. So let's see what Moody says, aside from the Brexit. It says Moody's has lowered the UK's credit outlook to negative, saying Brexit paralysis has made policy making less predictable. The move comes a little more than a week after lawmakers backed Prime Minister Boris Johnson's call for a general election next month in the hope of breaking the gridlock over his plan for the UK to leave the EU. Credit rating agencies had warned that Britain's sovereign debt would be at risk of a downgrade in the event of a no-deal Brexit, with S&P and Fitch having already put the country on negative watch. Moody's, which previously had a stable outlook for UK's credit, said that the country's institutions have weakened in the face of policy challenges and that British economic and fiscal strength is expected to soften. Of course it is. And the other thing I would say is that back in 2010, and I remember this very well and very clearly, George Osborne, the Chancellor then, promised that we'd have a balanced budget by 2015. And here we are now, almost in 2020. The budget deficit is running over 2% or around there, 2% of GDP, right? Which is a lot less than 5% of the US. So there's no sign of anyone lowering the outlook for the US credit rating, right? Well, they know if they do, they're going to get punished, right? With a huge lawsuit, right, by the US government. So they don't dare do that. That's the other thing my American viewers or people who invest in US treasuries need to know. So here we are, right? 2020 almost, budget hasn't been balanced, and now both the Chancellor and the Shadow Chancellor, which are the equivalent of Treasury Secretary or Finance Ministers, have come out and they've promised the world to the voters, right? More government spending, more deficits, more debt. And is it any wonder that the world is ballooning with debt, right? And with that as well, I will end showing you how the Federal Reserve is reacting to this, because we're seeing the world economy slow down, but the debt is ballooning and it can't stop, right? Why can't it stop? Because in a fiat currency based debt system, the debt needs to keep going up. If you pay off the debt in this system, you destroy the money. The Fed thought they could do that, right, with their QT, and they realized that it wasn't as easy as watching paint dry. So there you go. That's from Zero Hedge. Gold suffers worst week in 3 years as Fed balance sheet explodes. Almost 280 billion in the last 2.5 months. Look at that. It's the biggest increase since 2013. What about precious metals? Am I worried about it? Of course not. This is blatant. This is trying to take, this is trying to make what the Federal Reserve is doing, what's happening in the markets look normal, right? This is trying to keep people in the Titanic from going overboard on the lifeboats, right? This is trying to call the people back in to the ball, right? To party in the Titanic while it's sinking. That's what it's all about. So I wouldn't worry about precious metals the way it got hit hard this week. If anything, it gives you a chance before the Titanic sinks to protect yourself with lifeboats, right? Or to try to jump off, hold on to anything if you can, if the lifeboats are all gone, right? That's the thing. The lifeboats are still there, gold and silver. So there you go. The world is drowning in debt. Governments are drowning in debt. We're going to see more and more debt being created. And there will come a point where this system will implode. As Von Mises said, there's no other way to get out of a debt bubble other than a crack up event, which means the explosion of this system through hyperinflation or through a collapse of the debt, right? Does that mean prices are going to go down by a deflationary collapse? No, people are going to still be hard up. It doesn't matter. Inflation is not the measures that we see of CPI or RPI. Inflation is the creation of money and credit out of thin air, as William Patterson said over 300 years ago, right? If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Make sure you hit that little notification bell above to be notified of all my new videos. You can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. I wish you all a great weekend. Take care. Bye.